Welcome everybody. I've just got slapped over the wrist by Mr. Pepper, but we're very excited to have Mr. Jim Marsden with us tonight. So as you saw in the post, there's just going to be a bunch of discussion around a product that he's released. You released it about a year ago, is that right, Jim? The hook
not quite that long ago, but probably about sort of 6 months, something like that.
Yeah. So very awesome. It's an interesting product, but this is about clarifying from the man himself a whole bunch of misunderstanding that came out through that whole conversation with people and stuff like that. But whilst we're building the audience, Jim, you've just had a pretty exciting weekend. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how that went?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously for the same for all of us in the last 18 months, it's all been COVID. And thankfully, we're able to get out racing a little bit, not as much as we'd like, but we've just been down to Wales for King of Britain. And a fantastic weekend, nearly 70 races, mostly from UK based, in fact, all UK based. I think racing over 7 classes over 3 days, and it was absolutely brilliant. It was, I'm sure you're all aware that Wales, it usually rains cats and dogs the whole time, and we had 25 degrees weather. We had sunshine. We saw a little bit of rain one morning, so it was pretty much perfect racing conditions. And yeah, wonderful.
And the big news was
good to be out. Pardon?
And the big news.
Oh, the good news. We managed to retain our title. So yeah, we're Kings of Britain one more time. So yeah, very proud of the team, very proud of everything that they do. And as I say, I managed to inhale most of Wales, so I'm a bit husky at the moment. But yeah, so awesome. Just great to be with so many people.
The big looming question would have to be, as King of Britain, does Elizabeth know about this? And are you moving into Buckingham Palace?
Mate, given half the chance, I think my 4x4 would look fantastic in Buckingham Palace. But I'm not sure she'd be so happy.
So I don't think she'd be up for the joyride.
No, I think it's probably a little bit soon after Prince Philip, to be honest.
Probably. Robert, how are we going with people joining in, mate?
Yeah, look, I think we can get going now with the questions and talking about the hook link.
So yeah, so most of you would know Robert. Just, he and I often do stuff together. Make sure you head on over to his YouTube channel, and I'm sure he'll put a link up here somewhere so that you can link to that and follow his content. But he's going to be basically moderating tonight, as well as co-hosting to an extent, and he's got a few technical questions he wants to throw at Jim. So Jim, do you want to give us a little bit of an oversight of the hook link, please?
Yeah, certainly. Basically, the hook link is this. It's this chap here. It is a hook at this end, and it's a hook at this end, and it's for connecting pieces together. You could say that it is a replacement for this, which is the shackle. Now, we've all been off-roading for many years. I mean, for those who don't know me, I've been racing for 20 plus years. I've been lucky enough to win over 100 off-road titles. I also commentate at King of the Hammers, and I've been the owner and the founder of Gigglepin since, in fact, it'll be our 25th anniversary next year. And we specialize in manufacturing high performance twin motor winches is what we're most famous for. But we're always coming up with new and innovative products. And this is our recent one, or one of the recent ones. There's been quite a few others, but this is the one that's caught the eye recently. When we're racing, and this is where most of our stuff comes from and what it's used for, because we use it ourselves, we want to be able to join straps quickly or make connections fast. Now, shackles can be a little bit fiddly. Obviously, we've got a pin, which can get lost. We've got to actually physically undo it. And one of the best things that we use when we're doing off-road recovery is our winches. And most winches on the end have a hook. And it's fast to use, it's fast to disconnect. So what a lot of guys do is and girls for that matter, is they'll take 2 winch hooks and then they'll link those together using a hammerlock or 2 hammerlock style hooks, so you get this double hook. Now, the trouble with a double hook is it's actually really very heavy, and it moves and it flexes, and it's not that easy to use. Whereas the hook link, he says again, what it means is that basically we've got a nice simple one piece of kit. It's fairly lightweight. It's rated to what we need it to be rated for the job that we're doing, and it works really well for that. So yeah, there it is. In a nutshell, it's basically a shackle replacement.
Right. So I had an awesome question, which I've just forgotten, but that's all good. They,
We have time.
If anybody's got questions, there's a Q&A down at the bottom of your Zoom feed. Ask any questions in there and we will get to your questions and seek to answer those for you.
One thing I also want to put, I mean, it's, I'm very conscious that I don't just want to be, here it is, here it is, here it is, because that's not what this is about. No. But one of the things that we find with Connection Kit is that where do you store it? Where do you put it? And one of the things that we really put into this was actually making sure that we had the ability to be able to store this so it's easy to get to, so you know where it is. Most of us, when we're using shackles, hooks, straps or anything, what we tend to do is to get chucked in a box in the back of the car or chucked in a bag in the back of the car. It's a faff to find them, it's awkward, it's difficult. What we've done with these is we've actually made separate mounts for them as well. So these mounts here, it just clips onto that like that. The keeper comes around and there it is, locked on. And these mounts can go onto a flat panel or onto a roll cage, so whatever you need it to be. So a lot of the guys in our world, they'll put these on the front of the car, for example, on a roll cage tube or something, or they'll put it in the footwell or something, so it's easy to get to. So when you finish using it, you put it back, you lock the catch, and there it is. It's there for you to use next time, not in the bottom of a bag or worse, in the bottom of a bog somewhere because you forgot to pick it up. So it's little things like that that make the difference. And I think that storage component is, it makes a big difference with it on a whole. And in fact, we actually found a whole new use for it this weekend after we lost the starter motor at one point in the weekend and I failed a hill climb. Yes, these things happen, and and ended with my wheels on full lock, and we actually used the hook link, flick that onto the steering because we don't want a winch rope in that area because we're going to damage the winch rope. So we use the hook link onto the steering link, then use a strop away from that, then attach the winch via a third link or another hook link off another strop to create a triangle, if you like, and then pulled our wheels straight. Which means we didn't have to put the winch rope in danger of getting into the wheels and stuff. So we were like, wow, that's brilliant. That's another use. So, but you know, all off-roading, every situation is different. Every time we go out, we always find a new way or something new or something that catches us out. As I say, been doing this a long time. And every time I get behind the wheel or every time I go out, even for a bit of fun, I always find something new. And that's why it keeps taking us back time and time again. That's
awesome stuff. So, one of the things that is a term that's used out there, and we are just those who are wanting to get to the hot topic being tow balls, we will get there. But one of the things that we see and hear termed is the closed loop winching scenario. Now, to my understanding of that definition, because your latches are using a spring as opposed to a positive locking device, they wouldn't be really defined as a closed loop.
Oh, absolutely not. System. In the same way that pretty much every single winch used in off-road recovery, unless of course it has a factor 55 nodule on there or something of that ilk, is not closed system. So it is just a winch hook with a gate. But those hooks are rated. Now, we're going to be touching on this later, I'm sure. I'm sure Robert's got an armory of stuff that he wants to throw at me. But we have to remember when we're doing this is that most off-road kit has actually been begged, borrowed and stolen from other industry. It hasn't actually been specifically engineered or built for what we're doing. So therefore, what we're doing is we're taking a shackle. And this is a perfect example. I have two shackles here. Okay, now this shackle here has all the whistles and bells, and it has all the correct pin ratings. It has all the right numbers. This shackle here is its poor brother. Now, they both look identical, but the reality is that this one's got a paper trail. So when you do kill yourself, that you can go back to the manufacturer and say it failed beyond its means or below its means. This one doesn't have that paper trail with it. The ironic thing is, neither of these need a paper trail because we're not lifting. And those paper trails are only to do with lifting. And that's the whole point, is that when we come to off-road recovery, we're actually talking about tow recovery. We're not talking about lifting. And that's completely different. So many of the off-road ratings that we see, or many of the strops and the shackles that we see, are rated for lifting, not for off-road and for towing. And so when we look at strops and shackles, I was going to bring out a few lifting ones and just show you because they have the MBS on them and they have all of these bits and pieces and multiple 7-time factors and these. That's great if you're lifting, but we're not lifting. So those actually don't actually, well, it depends on your country, I'm guessing, but certainly in the UK, those factors don't have a place here. It's down to us to actually.
Why don't they have a place? Because if you're putting a force on something of, let's say, 5 or 6 times or 3 or 4 times, what does it matter whether that force is vertical or horizontal?
Everything by the definition of law.
I forget law, but I'm talking about strength.
No, I mean, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about law, because the reality is that that's what it's all about. I mean, otherwise, why would it exist at all?
Well, no, what I'm interested in is if you've got a shackle which is rated for 6 times, so 4¼ ton shackle, the Australian one's rated for 6 times that because they're used in hoisting equipment, right? So
exactly for hoisting.
Right, exactly. Now that's a great safety factor, arguably too much, I think. I'd normally work on a factor of 2 times for horizontal pulling, but 6, why is it bad? You know, I mean,
we all know that the world is full of health and safety nonsense these days, but they create these things for a reason. We do not want to die. It's as simple as that. And so if you're working in industry with heavy cranes and you're working with this, we've all watched the YouTube videos. We've all seen, I mean, let's face it, we all spend hours trawling through this stuff to watch cranes falling off towers and to watch other things falling down. And it's all spectacular, and we all hope it never happens to us. And that's why these safety factors exist. But the cold, hard truth of the matter is that for tow recovery, we don't need to have that. That's why your winch ropes, for example, all have braking strain. And that's the same for all winch ropes ever since vehicle recovery winches have been designed. So we're not actually allowing for safety factor. What we're doing is saying, here is what is the rope's given strength. And that is the same for the straps and shackles that we need to use them. However, let's be sensible here. We don't actually want to use a shackle that is just at level, because that would be dumb, particularly when I can buy that shackle here for, it's less than 20 bucks. Okay, I'm going to have to work in round numbers because I'm not great with Australian dollars, but so it's less than 20 bucks to buy something of this ilk, and we know it's safe. But equally, this one here is $10 Australian dollars, and it's probably going to do everything that most off-roaders will want it to do. And we stock both of these, and we find that we outsell this one 3 to 1, because people just want this shackle because they know they're going to lose it in the mud. They know that they're probably going to chuck it in the bottom of a bag and not see it for 3 years. So they'd rather spend 10 bucks than 20 bucks. And the reality is that this one is actually going to do the job. So that's what we're working with here.
Yeah, look, I understand that. For me, safety is important. So I'd spend the 20 bucks, and my shackles last for years and years and years, so I don't mind investing a little bit further. I just paint them a different color, so I wouldn't think to economize of $10 or £10 by buying a shackle which isn't rated. That's for sure. But maybe that just I'm a different mindset I've got. I don't know.
Well, this is the whole point, is that we're not talking about, and that's the whole point, Robert, is that you, me, and everyone else out there, we all have our own ideas on what's right and what's wrong. I mean, it horrifies me, as I'm sure it does you. I mean, I don't know if you have off-road play parks there, but we have off-road play parks here called Pay and Play. You rock up at the gate, you pay your 60 bucks, and you can go and drive around a muddy little hole and, you know, pull your friends through, have a laugh, and do these things. I think it's probably a bit different in Australia, but that's most people's off-roading experiences inside the UK are based on these pay and play sites. And the things that you see happening there are horrific. You will see ropes that have been knotted together that have been used for recovery. So you've got this great big ball of knotted lump in the middle. You'll see shackles joining 2 ropes together that then they're snatch loading on. And there's no policing of any of this. And all you can hope to do is educate. And I think that's the key word with all of this, is educate. And then, you know, and be able to impart some advice to people before they do go and kill themselves. Equally, vehicles around the world are very, very different. So, for example, the average overland 4-wheel drive in Australia is over 3 ton. You know, it's a big weapon, and you're also looking to cover vast distances. Well, to us, most pay and play sites are literally a few acres, and you know, and most of the vehicles are going to be either trailered there or going to be road carrying cars that are going to be driving home. So it's a very, very different environment.
I've done some green laning there, and it was interesting. So
exactly that.
Let's continue on this. So I think the hook link is rated at 4.5 tons, right?
Well, we do two versions. So we have this one. This is the standard version here, actually a different color, and she's rated to 4.5, and this one here is rated to 6.5.
6.5.
And that's breaking, yeah, 6.5 ton, 4.5 ton.
Okay.
Okay.
Now,
and that's breaking strength.
Okay. Now, how did you arrive at that breaking strength? So, for example,
Well, what we go on.
Yeah. So, for example, you might take one unit and it breaks at 4,501, and then we'll call that good. Or you might take, I don't know, 20 units from different batches, and they might break at 6 tons. And for a safety factor, you then round it down to 4.5. What was your method in thinking to come up with 4.5?
You're not far wrong, actually, with where you're going. Now, if we look at most recovery straps, strops, shackles, and of that nature, and I'm just going to go with this for a moment because it's important. This is one of our, this is called a choke links that we do. It's a well-known one, but you'll see on there, I don't know if anyone can see, it actually has on there a breaking strain tag. It will say on there, it's actual breaking strain.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the point at which it's going to go kabang. Now, I'm always, and the same with winch ropes. I mean, let's face it, every winch rope out there, Dyneema-based winch line, has its maximum breaking strain printed on it. And it is to the kilo, usually.
Yes.
And I always think, well, do you know what? We probably could do with a bit more of a safety factor here because we all know what's going in.
Yep.
So when we started testing, with these, and here's a example A. And when we started testing with these, we started testing in bare aluminium. Because why would we want to make a change and start paying to put expensive coatings on them? And I thought, actually, do you know what? Is there going to be a variable? And we had a big argument here in the design office about, does anodizing actually have any difference to surface tension or anything like that? So we started playing with anodized finishes and looking at these as well, trying to work out whether any of this actually makes any difference at all. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think, you gentlemen have been around the world a bit, that an anodized finish has any difference on the strength properties of an aluminium? Do you say aluminium or aluminum?
Aluminium. We pronounce.
Thank God for that. Right, there we are.
No, it's not aluminum. With apologies.
Exactly.
American.
No. We just turned off half the American viewers. Apologies, guys. It's still a bonnet, not a hood. But yeah, I mean, what we found is that when we started testing this, the difference between bare aluminiums and coated aluminiums made a real difference. In fact, we were seeing anything up to between 1/4 of a ton and 1/2 a ton of difference between the units. And there was a difference again between nickel plating and also hard anodizing and soft anodizing. And so we had to take all of those factors into account as well when we're doing it. The other one is that different aluminiums have different stretch factors. So some aluminiums have a different yield and return. And about the only thing I learned at physics at school, and my physics teachers are going to be sitting there cringing when I say this, was elastic plastic snap. Okay, so everything has an elasticity to it, so it'll stretch and return, and it'll only do that a certain amount of times before it becomes plastic, which means it'll stretch and stay stretched. Beyond that point, it then goes to snap. Now, what we wanted to also learn was, what is the elasticity? How many times can we put a load onto something before it actually starts to fail? Okay, it holds that plastic point and then becomes a fail, because that's important. Because something like this, if we're working on aluminiums and then we put it out there in the real world and the guys only go to use it, let's say, I don't know, pull a figure out of the air, let's say they use it 10 times at a higher load and then it deforms. I mean, is that actually acceptable?
Yeah.
And I didn't think it was. So we wanted to test those factors. So to coin a phrase, actually I can't use that phrase, it's a bit rude, I'll use another one. We've spent quite a bit of time working this out and spent far more money than probably I'd first envisaged, breaking stuff to learn what its reaction rate is. Because I don't want to put this out there, because these aren't just going to be used by, me. These are going to be used by Joe Public and, most importantly, my friends, because most of my friends are racers. So therefore, it's very important. Now, we have our own in-house test rig, but it was also important that this is done independently. So we drew up a whole test scenario, and because it's towing, there isn't actually a rigorized test procedure. So we created one for this and made sure that it was inside. So we had I forget what it was. I think we had a return to plastic or an elastic return from 4 ton at 50 cycles. We did that where they had to hold for, I think it was 20 seconds and then release, and then go again for 20 seconds, release. Trying to put this into, trying to create a scenario that, you know, as if it's working over time. And I mean, there is a line we can't cross because we're not a massive company, but safety is paramount and we have to work through that. So I've got piles of dead stuff all around me. Now, the interesting thing here is we decided that sort of a 1.5 safety factor would be the right way to go. And that's what we've applied with our standard units. So she breaks at around about, as an average, just on around about 6 ton. So we've applied a 4.5 ton safety factor to that one. Or breaking strain, sorry, to that one.
Yeah, okay.
But the bigger one, the 7075,
yeah,
she's a remarkable bit of kit. Now, 7075, that's the other one's made of 6082 aluminium for those out there who want to be geeky on it. The other one is the 7075. Now, 7075 is actually an aluminium grade that we use a lot in racing. It's used an awful lot in aerospace, in defense, those kind of things. It's the top of the tree when it comes to aluminiums. Now, the interesting thing with 7075 is its incredible durability. The first one we put on the rig, because the way the rig's being set up, is that they would apply a tonnage, and then every 100 kilos, we would stop the rig and we'd break out the calipers, and we'd measure if there was any stretch inside the product itself, and we'd keep repeating. Now, first of all, we tested the 6082s, and we know that they're going to fail at on and around that sort of 6.5 ton kind of mark. Okay, so we're waiting for this to go. Now, we started to see deformation on the 7075 at a similar kind of tonnage, and we were starting to get concerned about this, and so we didn't want to get too close to measure it because could potentially go bang. And then we started to the first one we tested, we were just stretching every 100 kilos, stop, stretching. She went to over 9 ton before it finally let go, but the deformation was incredible. But it wouldn't. We got so then we were like, wow, okay. So at what point does it deform but won't return? At what point? And so the testing for the 7075 was a lot more intense than the testing for the 6082 because we had this a bigger deformation factor to allow for, and that's why. So even though she breaks at a boggling as an average over 9 ton, I wound back the safety factor to 6.5, and the reason I've done that is because, or the breaking strain, should I say. And the reason we've done that is because we don't want people getting up to there, because we do see deformation. And that's the other point that I would like to point out, is that these things, they're not just gonna suddenly just go boom, all right? They're gonna stretch and they're gonna deform, and they're gonna give you a physical a warning that you can see if you're getting any deformation in it. And, oh, hello.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Oh, right, okay, yeah. Fantastic. I wonder what was happening there. I was like, oh, where are we going?
Yeah,
so,
basically,
yeah, so actually,
force, right? And then this is your elastic. Actually, I've got another slide somewhere on this, but this is your elastic point here where once the force is reduced, it will go back to its original size. Beyond that
exactly
point,
that.
And you can increase force, but it actually often sort of, the best way to do it is grab a paper clip and keep on playing with that, and that's kind of a little minimum demonstration for you there. So the MBS isn't actually that representative. You've got to look at the yield point here. And what I like about what you were saying, Jim, was that you'd actually sort of gone up to the point where it deformed and come back 50 times. And then if I heard you right, that was about the 6.5 ton mark, and you've downrated it to 4.5 tons.
Absolutely.
So I'm really, really happy to hear that. And that's what I'm trying to push all recovery manufacturers to do, because as far as I can see, when I see 4.5 tons there, as far as I know, that could just be tested one unit to 4,501 kilograms, call it good. And there's nothing to stop it. So yeah,
I've got a pile of these out back. Yeah. Anyone wants some broken hook links?
Right. Now, a question for you. Why wouldn't you put the MBS on there and say, look, the maximum breaking strain is likely to be about 6.5, but the working load limit is 4.5, and in that way people can look at it and go, yeah, okay, I know
It's a valid
go up to 4.5 safely, and there's a good safety factor there for me. Why would you not label it?
Do you know what, Robert? That's not something we'd even considered, because it's not a lifting product. And coming back to what we're saying about it, because it's not a lifting product, and it safely says on it, it's not a lifting product. We didn't feel there was a value in that. But look, this is an open discussion. If we feel that that's something that we should be adding, then I'll take that on board. And we'll look to improve the product by doing that. Is to say, every day is a school day. I'm learning every day, and
I think that would be a valuable addition, because I certainly looked at it and went to myself, well, 4.5, my cheapo low mount 12,000 pound winch is getting up near to that. Now
it is.
I mean, designed this for a winch competition. Some of your winches I'd actually would be interested. Some of your winches would pull phenomenal amount of power. Does this cope with the maximum of your winches?
What we have to remember, the honest answer is no. Okay, I mean, I can build my winches so that they're pulling over 14 ton. Equally, most competition winches and most competition trucks weigh around about the 2,000. Let's say about 2.25 ton, most competition trucks as an average. Okay. Now, most competition trucks aren't actually ever physically really that stuck. They are having issues with gravity. Either the hill is very, very steep, or they're having issues with suction, or they're caught on their axles. And we're going to now be using our winching techniques to actually assist us to remove that vehicle in such a way. Our winches are providing probably no more than a couple of ton of actual loading, but what they're doing is doing that very, very fast. So we've all watched the winch competitions, particularly in Australia, and what's actually happening is that those guys they're actually trying to overcome gravity or something like that and just find traction. So the loading that those winches are under is actually usually not that high, unless you're in a bog in Scotland or in Wales that's over your bonnet, and in which case that does become a really, really deep, hard drag.
So I had another question for you there. You mentioned, and we're going back in the conversation a little bit, but you mentioned how you found the anodizing added a reasonable level of strength to the product, which is fascinating. And I'd love to explore that more, but we might hold that for another conversation, because we do need to get back to towballs, because I know there's people in the audience here who are here to understand about towballs. But my question is we know that these products are going to be used on rock. They're going to get cut. They're going to be abrased. They're going to be damaged.
Yep.
How much of a compromise to the working limit is that damage going to be?
I mean, the same thing with winch ropes. Yeah. Okay. If we drag a winch rope across a rock, okay, we are limiting its life. We need to cut that piece out and we need to throw it away. If you get your hook link, okay, and you go and put a great big notch into it, or you go and do something bad to it, question it yourself. If you're not sure, ask a friend. If he's not sure, speak to an expert. Okay. Make a decision on your kit. Something that bothers me massively is when we're using off-road recovery strops. There's something about off-roading. I don't know what it is in the mentality of us off-roaders, but we have this thing that if I buy a piece of kit, it must be for life. And that's a shocking thing, but it's true. And the reality is that this sling here is, it's $20. Okay. If it gets any frayed edges on the ends here, you should be throwing it away. But so many off-roaders, they'll just stick it in their box as a just in case. It's a mentality that I try to batter out of people when I see it at winch competitions.
Interesting. We don't have it too much in Australia. We do view certainly quite a lot of stuff as disposable.
That's really refreshing, because over here it seems to be that everybody buys something for an off-roader and therefore it must have a lifetime warranty. No. It really is something that we're trying to break down those barriers on and get people to.
Yeah, I change my winch rope every 3 or 4 years. It just gets so manky. Now
exactly.
I've just run a poll, and the options there, I don't know if you can see them, but what would you like labelled? MBS only, working load limit only, or both. MBS only was 0, working load limit was 2, and both MBS and working load limit was 15.
Got some work
Well, I
ahead
mean,
of
that's
you.
a no-brainer then, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
I
there
think
you go.
that's
The,
so
the
so what we'll
Gigglepin
do is,
R&D department just expanded by what, 20
Yeah.
28
So
people.
the logic
but
for
isn't
me
that
wanting,
great?
yeah, the logic for me wanting that, and everyone else, please just write in the reasons you chose what you chose, is because I want to know what the safe load is, which is the working load limit. But I also want to know that if I go up to that working load limit, there is a good safety factor, and the MBS tells me that. So then I go, all right, Jim's tested this thing to 6.5. He says it's safe to use for 4.5. I'm good with that. I feel very comfortable going to 4.5. I'm not going to exceed 4.5, and that's good. Now, the only disadvantage of this is people perhaps not knowing what MBS and WLL is, but then that's up to, you know, people like myself and Matt and everyone to educate and say, look, this
But I
is
think it also, I think also as a manufacturer, and I think this is something that why we've actually printed the word braking strain on there, so that has an actual physical wording. Whereas, you know, when you put maximum braking strain or minimum braking strain and they put down MBS, there's a lot of confusion there. And I think what we will do when we redesign the labels for these and the lasering is that we'll actually make sure that we put the actual maximum braking strain, so it's there in clear letters, so that, you know, if you read English you can understand it. And and I think that's something that we as manufacturers and as off-roaders, we just need to get other people to promote that through as well. So it's important.
I want to commend you on coming at it from this way, and I'm not suggesting for a moment, and I don't think you would think it this either, that you're the only one that's doing this, but I want to commend you for thinking and understanding who your audience is, because there's many who are selling products into the market who don't give a stuff about the end user. They just care about the dollar. And I commend you, amongst other companies who, like Factor 55, like Red Winch guys, you know, Neil and that. You got this mentality of the end user is the valuable, you know, the person we're building this product for. Unless,
well, I mean, in most cases, we might not know the end user, but potentially every end user out there is a friend, a buddy, a mate, and that's the reality of it. And we're all human beings. Why would you not want to do it right?
Why would you not?
You know, we haven't been in business for 25 years by doing things badly. So we're trying to improve every day. We're trying to make things better every day. We're trying to do things in a manner that is, I mean, look, don't get me wrong. We're all still here doing this so we can put bread and butter on the table.
Absolutely.
You know, but
and nobody begrudges you that.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, look,
So
I just quickly want to run through some questions here, because there's the banking up here. So quick one, what is it made out of? Aluminium, I think is the answer, or aircraft grade aluminium?
Aluminium, yeah. So we use two different grades. We use our standard version, which is made of 6082 aluminium, which is a great, just to bring that into, so put some reality to that. 6082 would be an aluminium that you would see most people making. So for example, in Gigglepin, we would use that to making end plates and stuff like this, or winch covers and bits and pieces. It's a high-end engineering aluminium. Then the 7075 Pro series, which is it looks exactly the same. So there they are. That's the Pro and that's the thing. This one's standard 4.5. This one here is 6.5. And the reason that they're different colors is because they're different grades, and the same anodizing process creates a different color. Okay. Now, the 7075 is it's aerospace, it's defense grade, it's the bee's knees of aluminiums. Very expensive. In fact, the prices are going through the roof at the moment because of all of this stuff going on around the world. So yeah, they're very, very different grades.
Okay. And how much do they weigh?
That's a very good question, actually. I can't remember. Hold on, I can fix that. Karen, could you just do me a favor? Could you just weigh a hook link for me before I forget? I have staff for these
Love
things.
it.
Yeah.
Love it.
I'm guessing it's somewhere between a soft shackle and a metal shackle.
Oh, no, it'll be more than shackle. Okay. But it's definitely more than the shackle. Here you go.
Okay, get people to type in the comments how much they guess it is. I'm going to put in 1.2.
Yeah, I'm going to go for 1.3.
You know what? I know the answer. I know the answer to this, but I just can't remember it. You get to that point in your life where you just got so much stuff in your head that it just will not come out.
What other questions have we got there?
Okay, so
I can't believe we've avoided towballs this long. Come on.
I know.
no, well, look, well, let's get to towballs then. So, so the first
Gotta go.
thing,
See you later.
oh, you've got the answer. How much is it?
How much are they? Australian dollars, I'm not sure. Check out
No, no,
Smithy
No,
Engineering
no.
for more
How heavy
detail.
are they?
Oh, Karen's just weighing them right now.
Okay,
So
just
just
weighing.
two,
Okay.
So,
could be literally any second.
so
Okay.
Here we go.
I
Here we go. I've got the scores on the doors. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. All right. So basically, it's a kilo. So it's 995 grams.
Okay, so that's
There you go.
actually, I think, light. Yeah, pretty about the same weight as a shackle.
Yeah.
cool.
I'm doing a technical test here. Very similar.
Very similar, yeah. Okay,
Yeah, awesome.
good. So
So-
let's get on to
so
tow balls then, because one of the things that is that tow balls are different around the world, and certainly in Australia, the tow balls which we have are quite different to the ones in the UK. So can you give us an overview of what a British tow ball is like, and preferably if you've got, I don't know if you've got any images you could show, so you could see it's actually very, very different to the Australian version.
They are, yeah. Now, towballs and towball regulation is different around the world, and I know as I was talking before we came on, sometimes you do things that you just really regret. I had 5 seconds of video fail the other week when I decided to put a picture of me putting a hook link onto a UK spec tow bar. Now, UK spec tow bars are a swan neck that are bolted on, usually with 2 M16 bolt fixings that then have to go to a multiple point fixture that has spread across the chassis, goes back to the chassis legs, and goes to the chassis cross member itself. Now, on Australian vehicles, I know you guys use what we would call a receiver hitch, which is a box which then has a square tube that drops into that and then has some kind of receiver on it with a hand grenade and a thread underneath. We're not allowed those over here. Those are completely illegal. If we get, we can buy them, ironically. Nothing's stopping you getting them from the States or Australia, etc. And a lot of people do fit them to American style pickups because they're designed to do so. But if you're caught by the police or if you're caught by VOSA, you're going to get more than a slap on the wrist. It's big fines.
Why is that? Well, why are they viewed as so dangerous?
The reason being is that we've had lots of instances over here where we've had rollovers, and our trailer hitches are slightly different as well, I think. But we've had rollovers, and what happens is they actually twist off and they snap, and then the trailer becomes separated from the vehicle itself. Also, our brakes are different on trailers, which is worth noting. So, for example, our brakes on trailers over here are all manually operated. Your brakes are all electrically operated. So very, very different styles of doing things. So receiver hitches are banned here. We're not allowed to use them. And in fact, worth noting, off-road recovery in the MSA, so that's the British Motorsport Association, which is now called MSUK for anyone watching back home who wants to correct me. They actually, in their listed safe recovery points, are the UK style tow hitch as a ball is allowed to be used as a recognized recovery point for off-road if put onto an off-road chassis and obviously bolted on correctly with the correct spreader plates, etc. behind it. So, I mean, can you imagine doing that with an Australian ball hitch? I mean, that is literally like fitting a hand grenade.
I would still have an issue with it from maybe the hook link, because the way it attaches to the tow ball is positive, as in it encapsulates the tow ball and it can't come off. But I would still argue that even your design of a tow ball, if it's approximately, say, a 50 mil ball, you slip a strap over that, you still run a risk of that strap coming adrift under load. You might be pulling up a hill or something. So,
I mean, I personally, my biggest thing when we're off-road competitions and stuff, I mean, we've all seen those recovery eyes that you can buy with swivel ends on them, or even worse for me, you know, those little adapters that you can put a bow shackle on or a D shackle on that you then put a hole in your bumper and then put a nut on the back. I mean, how many of those have you seen? I mean, maybe you don't get those down your way, but I mean, at recovery sites, we see them pinging off all the time. I mean, I remember going back 20 years when kinetic ropes really first hit the scene over here, and they were just deadly. I mean, kinetic ropes have just been banned from all pay and play sites in the UK because we were having that issue where, you know, I mean, I remember being, oh Christ, I could only been in my late teens, early 20s, watching a Range Rover Classic doing a snatch recovery at a play day, and it took a the front recovery point and the shackle straight through the rear windscreen and took the passenger headrest clean off, and the passenger had only just exited the car a minute or so before, you know. So this is a danger that we've been aware of for many, many years, and I'm still, you know, and I don't mean to pick holes here because it's not my place to do so, but I'm still really surprised that you're allowed to have that style of tow hitch in Australia. I would have thought they'd have banned that, but then I suppose if you've got millions of them in existence, then how can you?
We haven't had the safety problems that you describe, basically.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, you know, we do have caravans rolling over, and I've just actually finished interviewing a couple about who rolled theirs, but that's all to do with the absolutely insanely heavy trailers we like to tow, with everything else there. One thing we actually, so that's more, it's nothing to do with the hitch, it's to do with the crazy design of the trailer and the lack of trailer dynamics.
The other thing with you guys, you chain your trailers to your vehicles, don't you?
We
have check chains. See, we don't have that. We have breakaway cables. So
we have both. We have both. So over 2
okay.
tons, you've got to have 2 chains, and we generally cross them. And we've got a breakaway, and the breakaway has got to be connected to something other than the tow bar. And we have independent electric brakes. So if you get trailer sway on, you can apply the brakes on the trailer only, and that fixes trailer sway straight away.
See, we should have that.
Yeah,
we should have that.
You should have that. You should. I think you've just got overrun brakes, which rely on the trailer. Now we use them as well, but they're only legal for 2-ton and under trailers. So if you get trailer sway on, you press that trailer brake button and it fixes it. I've actually just got some demonstration videos of models showing exactly how this works. It's great. So it is very, very good.
That's something. See, this is why can't politicians of the world get their heads together and sort this stuff out? Because it just may be so. When we sit here talking, it just all makes sense, doesn't it? Let's all have electric brakes. Let's not all have silly pintle hitches. Let's, you know, it all makes perfect sense. But let's go back to tow balls and to this little video, because it's important I explained what I was getting for. A lot of people have jumped on the bandwagon with this one, saying that I'm out to kill people and do stuff like that. That just wasn't the intention at all. We use these, obviously, in our workshops all the time. We're not just a winch specialist, we're a Land Rover specialist as well. And we use this on our forklift, on our recovery cars. We chuck it on over the ball hitch, over 50mm ball. It sits in there, means that the tow rope can't fall off. We're not doing snatch recoveries. We're not doing anything of that sort. It's a gentle tow recovery. For that, it's great. You know, it's just another, it's another string to our bow, in effect. You shouldn't be doing a snatch recovery with anything with a hook. Simple as that. You know, you wouldn't do it with a winch rope. Okay, so why should you do it with this? It's common sense, and it's about that one word we keep going to have come back to, which is education. And again, in fact, the first thing that we learned from that video was that we actually need to be applying that sense to our product and actually make sure that we're saying not for snatch loading. Again, it's one of those things, we were talking about it earlier. How far do you go trying to protect the public? Do we put walls up between the footpaths and the road so people can't step out in front of cars? It's difficult.
And it's very frustrating. And some of the comments you get from audience on your YouTube videos, you know, you just shake your head and just go, "I can't help you, mate." You know,
you got, mate. Yeah, you got. If you're gonna put yourself out here, you've got to have broad shoulders. I learned that many years ago.
Yeah. I've got people commented on my YouTube videos where I've talked about, you know, don't use a tow ball in a recovery, a kinetic recovery. Although I just say recovery because it's broader, it's safer. But I've had guys comment who have they're lying in hospital having been smacked by a tow ball that they were recovering off, and they're like, I'm now Googling this and I've come across your video and I now know it is really dangerous. And I still have people, the next comment will be some bloke arguing about how I've been tow balls, they're safe, you know, you wouldn't know what you're talking about.
I've been doing this for 20 years.
Yeah, so that's why the Australian reaction was what it was to your video, Jim, because we just saw a tow ball, and to that is literally deadly. There's coroner's reports out. I mean, I've got a photograph up about it's deadly. Now, we know that tow balls in the UK are different, right? And that's fine. As you said, it's an approved recovery point. But to an Australian watching that, they just see it hooked over a tow ball. And at the initial one, there wasn't any qualification of don't snatch with it. It was just a tow ball. And
Absolutely,
that's what we've got to say. No, look, we spend a lot of time telling people not to do this, and there it is. And this, I think, just makes it just comes back to how difficult international four-wheel driving is. You know, a term here is different to that, and you know, I've learned something about UK towing tonight, which I didn't know, which is really interesting. And incidentally, the UK actually have a towing test now, and I'm going to, I'm going to start trying to get that done in Australia because clearly we need one.
I was one of the very last. I mean, I think it was 2 years after I passed my driving test, which was quite a long time ago. They actually brought it in that if you want to tow vehicles, tow a trailer over 1 ton, you have to take a test. The test costs about about $1,000 Australian. And in fact, I pay for my staff to take their trailer tests here so they can actually tow trailers legally.
So the question, moving a little bit away from our discussion, but the question is, do you believe that's had a positive impact on people on the road? Are they a more educated driver towing?
Yeah, because they fear they don't want to lose their license. Equally, I also know there's a lot of illegal people towing trailers out there, but I mean that's dumb now because we have so many electronic devices in place by the authorities to catch you. We have load bridges that are built into the roads, so they're weighing you, and cameras taking pictures of you, working off of computer-built algorithms to work out if you're legal. And then you get pulled a few miles up the road by the police, and they'll be wanting to check your license. They'll be wanting to weigh your vehicle. You know, and that's happening all across Europe. I mean, we get. I do a lot of European racing. Well, I used to until COVID turned up. One of the big things, almost every single trip, one of our vehicles will get stopped. And the first thing they'll ask is, can we see your trailer license? Can we see your driving license? And they'll be looking for the trailer driving entitlement on the license. And that doesn't matter if you're in France, Belgium, Germany, or any of the main European countries. The police are hot on it and they're looking for it. Wow, but I'd like to point out that the trailer test itself, it's like a driving test. Okay, it gives you the bare bones of what you need to know. It's still up to the operator themselves to make sure that they arm themselves with the knowledge to go ahead and to actually use trailers safely. But it will give them the basics, so how to connect safely, etc.
So has anybody else got any questions that they'd like to ask Jim at this point? Anything coming up?
Going back to the tow hitch thing, and I think this is important here that we bring that up. Open discussion is massively important. Okay, I mean, I didn't like the comments. I mean, there were a huge number of really negative feeds, and as somebody who goes on the net a lot, I was like, wow, I was staggered at the negativity and the fact that people automatically assumed that we were suggesting that it was for snatch recovery, which was just clearly not the case. But this is great. The fact that we can sit here now and that we can talk about it, and that we can actually, there might only be one guy out there or one girl out there who didn't know about this, but if they now know, done. Okay, that's cool.
We will never know this side of the grave, but I'm convinced that the work that multiple people have been doing have saved lives, because
without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, certainly in this country, just banning the use of kinetic ropes. I mean, kinetic ropes are amazing things. We all know they are. I mean, I don't know if you know, they were first designed by the military or Marlow ropes in the UK for using, basically, if you had a 2-ton tank, a 2-ton tank could now recover a 4-ton tank. That was the idea behind it. Okay, using the kinetic energy. When they really started breaking through over here and people started using them, they were so dangerous. And there's been a lot of education since that time about them, recovery points, and everything that's associated to that, and that has saved lives. So there was a massive negative point 20 odd years ago, but that's come through now, and we're in a much better place than we ever were before. We see recovery points that are of a much higher standard. We see guys who are actually out there saying to people, look, stop, mate, you're going to hurt yourself, just think about this. And that's wonderful.
I think that's one of the observations I've made, and I think Robert and I may have talked about this at some point, and I noticed that non-stick Nick Jennings is in the conversation here tonight, and I think he's been a key part of it. But one of the things we've observed from looking in on the UK scene is you guys have got a very detailed and analytical approach to your winching, possibly that comes from the fact that you've got so little places to go. Wheeling hardcore, we can go and we can do 20 Ks of hardcore rock steps and everything in a day, no problems at all. Whereas you guys got one patch. So once you've done that rock step 3 or 4 times, what else do you do? Well, let's get bogged and do a cool recovery. Maybe that's what's going on, but we do notice that there's a lot more finesse and time taken to the whole conversation. It's just an observation looking in.
Yeah, I mean, we are massively limited. I mean, the places, and that's echoed right the way across Europe. I mean, the great events of times gone by, like the Breslau Rally, which used to be the Berlin Breslau, then it became the Dresden Breslau. And you can see why the names are moving here. Now it's just Breslau Rally, and that's because the areas that were allowed to off-road, so we were allowed to off-road in Germany, we're now not allowed to off-road in Germany, but we're allowed to off-road in Poland, but even those areas are being massively reduced due to environmental pressure. I think that's a conversation that I'd really love to have one day with some environmentalists, because if you drive a vehicle through a woodland, and I stand by this all day long, if you drive a vehicle through a woodland and you disturb the flora or fauna, the first place that you're going to see insects, the first place you're going to see birds is where it's been disturbed. And I strongly believe that in moderation, that 4-wheel drives really have their place in helping environmentals, because we don't have wild pigs, we don't have wild cows out there digging up that ground, bringing all those bulbs back up to the surface, okay, that get buried under years of leaf mulch, and that was a natural process. We don't have that natural process anymore. So limited use of 4-wheel drives in forest areas, I really believe has a strong effect on the environment, and actually better.
I think you'd be preaching the converted here.
Yeah, Look, time checks. So we want to wrap this up at about an hour. Now we could obviously talk for a lot longer on this. It'd be good to have you back on as
mate. We're talking off-roading. We could talk off-roading forever. Let's be honest.
Exactly. As a guest again, Jim, and I might get some more international people in from Canada, India, and a few other places. But guys, if you've got any questions about the hook link, which was what this was all about, send them up now. I've put a poll up there, as you can see. Don't know if you can see the results, Jim.
Yeah. I did actually I just saw one pop up from Nick Jennings, and just saying, this is all about speed and doesn't have a place in most types of recovery. Look, we're not all things to all men, okay? Like you can go into a supermarket and buy 7 different types of washing up liquid. Okay, if this is right for you, that's great. If it's not right for you, that's great. Okay, it's not a problem. You pick and choose the recovery kit that is right for you. What we're offering is a solution for most competitive guys who are looking for a little bit of extra speed and a little bit more ease of use. If you have time on your side, if it doesn't matter if you waste a couple of minutes, probably best to use a bow shackle. Let's be straight about it. It's a closed limb system. Okay, but if you're in a situation where it's safe to use a hook-based product and it's the right thing to do and it's not a snatch load, then hey, use a hook link. Why not? Save yourself a bit of time and have an extra cup of tea at the end of the day.
And I think this is what is starting to be a conversation I'm seeing, and where people are starting to need to have happen, is the conversation of the right gear for the right place to be used in the right application. Where once upon a time, at least here in Australia, and we're working hard to try and change this, there's the phrase is, oh, you're stuck, mate, let me go and grab the snatchy and we'll get you out. It's like, what about the shovel? What about the traction aids? What about letting your tires down, engaging full drive? Like, there's so much more before we go and get the snatch strap out. And
but it's quick, it's easy, and it's an elastoplast on most problems.
Yeah,
it's that easy.
Right. And it's like, there's far better ways to approach your recoveries than that. I'm going
to cut in on you there, Matt. I mean, I always have a wonderful conversation with Justin Andrews at Factor 55 every time I see him, because he's always like, hey, Jim, why aren't you using our gear? And the reality is, Factor 55, it's off-road porn, isn't it? I mean, it's beautiful. But the reality is closed-link winching systems for competition off-roading just don't work because they're not quick enough. Yeah, and we're all about that clock. Yeah. And so when we're doing that, we want to be using a hook. And we're always laughing with each other and taking the mickey out of each other, because it's completely different things. It's 2 worlds colliding. Yeah. And but he gets it, I get it, and also his boss makes the best tequilas ever.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm still waiting for
we've
Mike
been
to make
going
me one of those.
Yeah, we've been going for about an hour. So audience, if you've got any questions, quickly type them up now. Otherwise, we're going to bring it to a close. This has been an hour's worth of conversation, which is pretty good. So yeah, I don't see any questions there. So Jim,
Right.
much appreciated for you coming on. We really respect everything you do, and also just fronting up to explain all of this. Hope everyone's left better. I know everyone's left better educated, if not necessarily in agreement, but certainly better educated. So thank you very much. This will be on Mad Matt's YouTube channel in the not too distant future. So Matt, I'll leave it to you to close.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Jim. Thanks for being prepared to have the conversation, because it's this conversation that is going to improve our sport. It's going to keep people safe. It's a conversation that I think an audience can come to, listen, watch, and learn from, as opposed to a conversation which is all about selling a product. I don't care if you sell more of these on the back of this video or whatever. The conversation isn't about that, and I don't think you've come here with that as your motive. You've come here to explain yourself, to justify and explain where you went wrong, and I think you've owned up to
Yeah, exactly. Crazy 5 seconds. I'll be honest with you. We don't put out a single product that we don't use and test ourselves. Done, simple, not interested. We've got products that we thought about building before, and we've actually turned them down just because we don't use them ourselves. It's just, I can't give an honest view on something if it's not something that I feel I'm right about, and that's the same with the hook link. It's a matter of being that guy who can produce something that's right for the people that he's selling it to, and our company stands by that. I've learned something today. We'll be taking that away. We'll be changing the wording on the product so it's clearer. We'll make that happen, and I just want to say thank you to both you guys for giving us an opportunity to explain that little bit.
Yeah, no,
thanks so much, guys. I'm going to
thank you very much.
Thanks for attending, and see you guys on the tracks or maybe in the YouTube comments, and play nice.
Woo.
See you guys.
See you later.